There's a lot of good bow makers out there, and there's a lot of bad to the bone hunters. However, Mr. South Cox, owner of Stalker Stickbows, happens to be both. He builds incredible recurves, gorgeous wood, works of art, and then the dude is just an absolute killer. I would classify him as like that top tier guy that if he sees an animal and he wants it dead, he's going to find a way to get it dead. He just has that instinct. He has that killer mentality. He's a phenomenal hunter, a great bow builder. I've wanted to have him on for a long time. So we talk about his journey in becoming a stick bow hunter, his journey into becoming a stick bow builder. We talk about tuning tips. We talk about selecting a bow, how to select a recurve, what to look for in a recurve. And then we talk about some of the incredible adventures that he's been on, some of just the phenomenal places that he's seen, some of the incredible encounters that he's had with animals. Just unbelievable. Guys, Stalker Stickbows is the real deal. Beautiful bows. Listen, when I was in the market for a new recurve, I've said on social media, when I left Bear Archery, there was a hole in the recurve world for me. And I was really looking and really cautious about where am I going to go, because I had fallen in love with the traditional side of things at Bear Archery. But when Tom Clum, one of the best recurve instructors in the world, tells you, you got to go to Stalker. He not only builds phenomenal bows, but he's also a bad to the bone hunter. He knows how to build bows because he knows what he wants out of bows. It was a no-brainer for me, and I am incredibly glad I did. Guys, you're going to want to listen to this. If you're not a recurve hunter at all, don't worry. You're still going to enjoy the episode, I promise. If you're looking to get into shooting a recurve, this is a really good episode for you to start on. If you've ever even thought about, man, that would be fun to try, this is a really good episode for you to start on. Or if you've been in the game for a while, we do talk about some tuning tips and some tips to get the most out of your bow that you really might enjoy. Guys, this episode is brought to you by my friends over at 2O. Phenomenal Western gear, and they've just released some new products that I'm really, really excited about. The 150 merino hoodie, the 350 merino hoodie, the fingerless merino gloves, the puffy shacket. There are some really cool pieces that I am stoked about. Guys, you want to go check out 2O. In my opinion, they do merino in a world-class way. They do merino just about as good as anybody I have ever found. They have an incredibly sexy pattern. They offer you phenomenal technical gear at a great price. You have to check out 2O for your next hunt. The rain gear is the best I've ever used. The merino is top notch. The gear holds up really well. I have treated this gear like trash, and it holds up every single time. Go check out 2O gear. I promise you, you will be happy. But let's dive in with Mr. South Cox and talk about stick bows.
For the true sportsman, it's more than a pastime. It's a way of life. Embrace the lifestyle of hunting, fishing, and the thrill of the wild. Live the life. Be typical.
We talk a lot about our favorite bows, about our favorite camo, our favorite arrows, and we invest a lot of money into the gear that we use. Listen, that investment does not matter if you're not healthy enough to get out in the woods. That investment of your camo does not matter if you can't make it up the mountain to where the elk are. One of the best investments you can make is investing in your health, investing in the longevity of you as a hunter. Guys, Mountain Tough is truly changing lives of people all around the world. It's changed my life. It's changed lives of people like Mr. Randy Newberg. His testimony about Mountain Tough is absolutely phenomenal. He's even partnered with them to help make a program for people 50 and over because he's so passionate about what it's done for him in his life. Guys, Mountain Tough truly is incredible. And I want to give you a chance to try it for 6 weeks completely free. When you use the code TYPICAL, all caps, typical, you're going to get the original 14 days free, but then you're also going to get an additional 30 days free, 6 weeks of free training. Give it a shot, give it a try, and just see. I promise you in that 6 weeks, you'll feel better, you'll perform better, you'll look better, Everything about your life will improve if you just give it a chance. If you don't like it at the end of that 6 weeks, no harm, no foul. But I want to give you a chance to try it free for 6 weeks. Again, Mountain Tough, use code typical, all caps, and try it for 6 weeks completely free. Mr. South Cox, how are you, man?
Dude, I'm doing great. We're staring hunting season in the face. Life doesn't get any better.
Yeah. It's an exciting time. I made a post a few days ago. I'm excited. I took a little hiatus from the old stick bow, and I am super excited to get out there this year and chase them with it. So and I'll admit I had a rough couple breaks, and I'm like, I need my compound. I got to kill stuff. So I took the season to just kill a bunch of stuff, and now I'm ready to go back to struggling some. So
there you go. All right.
Well, man, I'm excited to chat. I really am. I am a firm believer that you should buy hunting equipment from hunters. I can't tell you how many. Well, there's no need to go through the names, but a couple times throughout the years, I've been running something or shooting something, and then you go to talk to them, and you're like, wait a minute, you're not a hunter? And they're like, no, we don't hunt. And I'm like, how are you making hunting gear? And so not only, let me just, I'll toot your horn. Not only does South make incredible bows, but he's also a very accomplished bow hunter. So it's the kind of company that you can be proud to support because A, you're getting a phenomenal bow, but B, they're made by a bad to the bone hunter himself. So I want to buy equipment from people who are out testing and using the equipment and knowing what works and what doesn't. So that is 100% of the reason. After leaving Bear, there was a big hole in the trad side, and I was talking with Mr. Clum, who's my mentor in the game of shooting a recurve, and he said, well, man, if you're looking for a bow, like there's nowhere else to go other than South Cox, because A, he makes great bows, but B, he knows bows because he uses bows. And so, but I did want to chat about that. Was it the love of stick bow hunting and recurve shooting that made you want to start making them, or did you start making them and then fall in love with them and start hunting with them?
No. So to be honest with you, so I started shooting a recurve when I was 5. I found one under my neighbor's house and commandeered it, and then started shooting it, and dabbled in traditional archery, throughout my life. But I got my first compound when I was in 8th grade, and then started hunting with a compound. Got a, upgraded, more adult version when I was 16, and started hunting then with a compound, and continued to shoot a stick bow a little bit, but I was primarily, shooting a compound for probably 25 years. And then, the opportunity. So along the way, I met the guy that had started Stalker Stickbows in, I believe it was 93. And he'd been running it. I think he started in 87, if I remember correctly. So he'd been, doing it for half a dozen years or so, and was knee deep in it when I met him. And, he had been doing it, built the company up to the point where he was ready to launch into doing that full time and quit his construction job. And then his boss offered him a promotion to work as a construction superintendent, which came along with benefits and 401k and paid vacation and, all the stuff that comes along with the job security of working for a large company. And he, had 4 kids, and, was holding the dream in one hand, and then the security of, working for a larger company, and opted to end up going that direction. So basically the company, he just shut it down and it sat dormant. He actually, at that point in time, would have been probably 3 years or so later, he called me up and offered me, to buy the company from him, but he had way overvalued it. And I didn't have that kind of bread at that point in time in my life. And so I had to pass on it. And then fast forward about 10 years and he called me back up again and offered it to me for about a third the price that he wanted the first go round. And at that point, I just sold a rental property and had some money that I was, figuring out what to do with. And so that was 2007. And I was in construction as well. I've been a lifelong woodworker myself, even before I started doing that professionally when I graduated from high school. And woodworking to me is just as great of a passion as building bows. And I absolutely loved it. At that point, I'd been doing construction for 18 years and self-employed for 11 of those at that point in time. And so I ended up buying Stalker Stickbows with the plan of making a gradual transition into doing the bow building thing full time. So I spent the next 7 years rebuilding the company and, kind of working on new bow models and learning the craft and all that. And so it wasn't necessarily a passion of traditional bow hunting. Matter of fact, to be totally candid, I was scared stiff. I thought I was going to go back to eating tofu. So I was very apprehensive about setting my compound down. I had hunted enough with the stick bow to know how challenging it is. And I was really concerned that, hey, this is the end for me of eating meat. Right. Mm-hmm. So, fortunately I made a transition, from the compound to a stick bow pretty easily and very successfully, honestly. I think my mule deer success rate is hovering somewhere around 80% with the stick bow. And which I don't know, is probably 5 times the average with all but archery equipment, I would guess. I don't have any hard stats on that, but
right.
My thought is it's probably somewhere, in that 15% range.
That is incredible, dude. And that's why, when you talk to anybody in the recurve world, in the traditional world, that's almost the first thing you hear is that South not only, is a bow maker, but he's just an absolute killer. And I admire that. I admire dudes who can there's good hunters out there. Don't get me wrong, but there's that next level of just hey, if I see something, I'm going to kill it. And I admire that type of person, dude. And by all stretch of the imagination, you're that type of person, throwing up those type of stats. And I had a similar start to shooting a recurve. Mr. Jim Willems was actually the first one that said hey, I've got to you need to learn how to shoot this thing, and kind of put it in my hands. And I started just tinkering with it and trying to get an arrow to hit the target. And, but honestly, I had no coaching. I had no instruction. I was kind of watching YouTube, and I had a lot of friends that shot. So I was bugging Jim, and I was bugging Eichler, and I was bugging these guys with questions how do I get this thing to fly right? How do I, and then I went up to Missouri to Mr. Harv Eber's house. And he kind of gave me my first instruction of this is how you execute a good shot. And he had spent time under Joel, so he kind of gave me the Joel Turner rundown. But I still that left me wanting even more. I was just I want to learn how to shoot this thing well. And I'll never forget. It was actually a compound shooter. John Dudley's the one that pissed me off to the point where I'm all right, dude, I'm gonna learn how to shoot this thing. Cause I'll never forget, we were on a conversation. I was on the Knock On podcast and talking about making this switch. And he said this quote, he said, well, I enjoy accuracy too much to shoot a stick bow. Now, what he was saying is that he can't be accurate enough. I get that. He wasn't saying if you shoot a stick bow, you can't be accurate. But in that moment, I was just you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to become accurate with this thing. And so over a couple times of flying to Denver and just taking everything I could in from Tom, I went on a killing spree. It was everything I shot at died. And then I went through, like I said, a bad season. And it's funny because I had to eat some crow because I had been promoting and saying like, hey, if you ever want to be good with a recurve, you got to sell your compounds. Like you can't be that person who's like, all right, well, I'm not shooting good today. I'm going to go get the compound. And that's exactly what I did. Shot a bear in Idaho, never found it. Shot over a giant buck in Kansas, missed. Like, so I was just like, this is stupid, dude. I want to kill stuff. Picked up the compound. So I had to eat crow because I did exactly what I had telling people not to do. But yeah, that initial start was like, man, this is easy. Like, why does everybody say this is hard? And really, like, when you look at, take the Pope and Young record books, average, all the average animals in Pope and Young, 17 to 23 yards are where that's killed. And that's completely doable with a recurve. Yeah. Completely doable. Really is. Mm-hmm. And then you realize like, actually, if you have a deer at 17, it's almost easier to shoot them with a recurve than a compound. There's less movement. There's less things to get in the way. There's less things to worry about. It's almost easier.
You can get your shot off faster.
Yeah, 100%. And that was kind of, that's kind of what ticked in my mind was, I was talking with Fred one time on a podcast and he said, you know what, Don, I'll tell you what. He said, you and I will stand at a target at 18 yards away. Our bows will be hanging on a hook just like they would be in a tree stand. And when you say go, we'll both shoot that deer. You got to get your bow down, knock your release. I'll shoot the deer. He said, now yours might be in the 12 ring. I'll say that. Yours might be, pinpoint on an aspirin. But he said, I can almost promise you I'll have 2 arrows in the kill zone before you have 1. And I was like, interesting thought. And so I started like doing that, challenging myself. And back in the day, I'd post a lot of pictures of groupings from 20 yards, 23, 24 yards, 3 arrows with the compound, 3 arrows with the recurve. And while, the recurve was a little bit outside the compound, they were still dead. Like it was still a perfect kill shot. And so that's kind of what made me, really take a deep dive into this. And honestly, man, the last few days of starting to shoot again, it's just reminded me how much I love it. And it's reminded me like, okay, it's time to go kill stuff with this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I like I said, I hunted the compound for about 25 years and wouldn't give those days or memories up, at all. I learned a tremendous amount. I was able to be really successful with my compound and I wasn't a guy that, was 60 yards was a poke for me, back in that day, in that time frame. And I know guys, nowadays are able to stretch that out to, 80 or some north of that. But for me, it was basically a sub 60 game, although I did, kill animals beyond that. But 60 yards was a pretty practical long range shot distance for me. But that did enable me, with that extra yardage there, I did really well. I learned a ton. It gave me a fantastic foundation of knowledge and experience to start that journey as a traditional bow hunter and made that transition, picking up that stick bow a lot easier for sure. But, for guys that are sweating it like I was, there are some adjustments and there is a bit of an adjustment period, but I would say it'd be a lot easier making the transition from a compound to a stick bow than it would be from a rifle to a compound.
I would agree with that. 100%. Because at the same time, like I'll never forget the first lesson I ever had with Tom. You see these recurve shooters and you think, okay, I got to bend way down here and I got to, and Tom looked at me and said, hey, a bow is a bow. Like same mechanics of how you draw and anchor your compound, draw and anchor this. And I was like, really? Like, okay. And so you're 100% right. If you have spent time shooting archery, it's not as hard of a switch as you think it's going to be. It's really not. And man, I mean, and like when I was at the peak, like when I was I would shoot 100 arrows a day easily. With my recurve when I was really trying to get good and really trying to get started. And I mean, I'd have the kid throw a tennis ball out there at 40 yards and be able to hit it. Like you can get really stinking accurate with these things if you take the time and practice. And yeah, I mean, man, and here's what I'll say about traditional archery. The archery community is a beautiful community. Like it's a super tight knit, really cool community to belong to. But then when you whittle that down and you get inside the traditional archery community, it's something that makes you never want to leave. Like it is. Oh man, you get to meet some absolute legends, and you get to hear stories like, and man, like when you get involved with Compton and you get involved with some of those guys who've been making bows for seems like 100 years, like, oh my gosh, it is such a cool community to belong to. It makes you want to represent traditional archery well. And it's just, it really is a cool community to belong to, man.
It's really inclusive, like you said, you go to some of the shoots, the traditional, specific shoots, and it's like you can pull up to anybody's campfire, sit down, and you're always welcomed, or join any group of, bow hunters as they're walking around on the course and shoot with them. And it's a very welcoming community. And I'm really, even the last 20 years, I've seen a massive change. There was lots of what I used to call trad Nazis, back in the day when I first started building bows, where a lot of that kind of older mindset and the, poo-pooing the compound shooters and just really short-sighted, in my opinion. And because when you think about like the future of hunting, we need to bring more people in. And that's the same thing with traditional archery. The temptation is always to go towards technology, more advanced, faster results, greater accuracy, like that. And so picking up a compound bow seems like the natural way, because I mean, if you think about it, there's very few traditional archery only seasons in the country, right? Across all the states. So you have to love hunting with a stick bow to pick up a stick bow and go hunt in a season where you are hunting alongside guys with a compound. Because the guys with compounds, obviously with the greater technology, all of the, the positive stops that you have with shooting a compound, you can pick up a compound in, an hour. You can teach a new person to shoot a softball sized group at 20 yards, with a properly set up bow. It's going to take quite a while to master that kind of accuracy with a trad bow. And so there's very little incentive for a guy that's picking up archery to pick up a stick bow and hunt alongside a guy with a compound in a archery season, because you could, if you're looking for the easiest route, it's clearly going to be the compound. And if we're interested in keeping traditional archery alive, we need to be much more welcoming as a group for these guys that are shooting compounds currently and who express interest, or even maybe who don't, but you're at an archery range and you're standing at a line with, several guys that are shooting a compound. And if you're harassing them, beyond the point of just it being good fun, poking each other like we do as men, but it becomes like more of a serious tone, then all you're doing is turning that person off to wanting to pick up a traditional bow, because it's not, you portray yourself as not a welcoming community. And thankfully, I've seen that, severely, that kind of behavior and attitude severely decline over the years. And I'm really thankful for that. Because if you think about, just as hunters in general, we want to be a welcoming group to people who are non-hunters. We need to grow the number of hunters to be able to combat these anti-hunters and also uneducated non-hunters at the ballot box. Otherwise, we're going to be getting beat and when these ballot initiatives come along. So it's important, at minimum, if a person doesn't pick up a bow or doesn't pick up a rifle and join us as hunters, to at least have an understanding of what hunting is about and hopefully have that portrayed in a positive light. because like I was saying it, particularly within our group, if you got a bunch of trad guys out there and they're not welcoming to the compound crowd, then we're not doing ourselves any service there. We're not going to help keep this end of the sport alive.
I can't tell you how many compound shooters. I've got a 3D range in the backyard, so all my buddies always come over and shoot. And I can't tell you how many times if I just hand them my bow and say, why don't you just fling a couple, man? Mm-hmm. They do. And they're like, dude, this is stinking fun. Like, this is awesome. And I'm like, yeah, it really is. And then they immediately are like, okay, help me. Where do I order? Like, what bow should I order? What poundage should I get? What length should I, they're automatically asking questions about how to get into this.
Yep.
And so and looking back, that's exactly what happened to me. Jim was at my house shooting and he was like, hey, you got to try this thing, man. And I shot, 10 or 12 arrows and I'm like, this is so stinking fun. And of course at the time I was working for Bear. So I'm like, dude, why don't I have one of these already? Why haven't I been doing this my whole life? And, but when you put aside okay, you shoot technology and you're different than me. And you just say like, hey, you want to try this? Like, man, they immediately fall in love with it and here's why. Here's the conclusion I've come to. With compound archery, they have lost that euphoric high of hitting the target. Like when you're a kid and you start shooting and you hit that target, it's like, holy crap, I just hit a target. Like you're pumped and you're stoked. There's no room for that anymore. Like you've reached that pinnacle. So either you're shooting good and you're satisfied or you're shooting bad and you're mad. Like that's what it is, But then they go and then they pick up the recurve and they miss the first 5 shots and they're like, this thing's stinking stupid. But then they hit one and they're like, I stinking hit it. Like they get that euphoric high back. They get that feeling of like accomplishment back. And so with shooting a compound and even myself, like trying to go back to it, for that season, you just lose that gratification. Like even, like you said, shooting 60, 70, 80, 90 yards, it's okay. Well, I'm hitting the target. Like, cool. That you never have that. Just so either you're shooting bad and you're just mad at the world or you're shooting good and you're satisfied. But with picking up the recurve, it's like, even when I'm shooting bad, I'm having fun. And then when I'm shooting good, it's like, dude, there's this euphoric high of just like, I can't miss. Like, this is awesome. And so, yeah, I wish more people would try it. And to my understanding, now I had already come on to the traditional scene after, this kind of transition. The push was already around. Joel was already around. Tom was already around. But from my understanding, there was even some hatred in the traditional crowd of like, well, we shoot 3 fingers and we shoot extinctive. What are you talking about? Yeah. 3 under and point on. Like, dude, you're getting too new age for us.
Right.
Like,
that's not trad.
Yeah, that's not trad. And I'm like, again, and we live in a world now where that's so accepted. I can't even hardly imagine that. But yeah, I mean, people hate change and people hate seeing advancement. But to your point, again, the archery community is like the traditional archery community is one of the most welcoming, cool places to belong to. And I think you're right. I think it's because some of that like resistance to change has taken place.
Yeah. If you think about it, so like I said, I'm 56 years old. I started shooting over 50 years ago. This was long before I'd ever heard of compound bows, let alone seen one. And a person that picks up a bow now, or even probably in the last 10 years, many of them have never shot a bow with their fingers. So, they've only been connected to that bow by a mechanical release. And, for them to then, like you're saying, out there at your range, pick up a stick bow and then shoot it with their fingers. It's almost like magic when you hit a target. I mean, it's like totally different, the same mechanics in shooting, but completely different. You're absent of a sight. You're now holding the string with your fingers. It's a totally different experience. And I think for guys that are, considering transitioning or trying it out, getting with a coach, like you had talked about Tom Klum. 100%. I'm very fortunate. He's in just over an hour from my house. So I'm able to drive down there and go into a shop and get lessons from him. And I've done that myself. I haven't taken advantage of him near as much as I should, but he's an underutilized resource. Denver International Airport is less than an hour from his shop, and it's, relatively efficient no matter where you live in the country to fly into Denver. It's a major hub for airlines, and he is available there. Is shop for lessons. You schedule it ahead of time, fly in and spend a few $100 or a couple $100 on, an airline ticket, and then, get into a shop and get started out the right way. And your love for it, your skills, your base knowledge will have so much more of a solid foundation, and you'll be a lot more successful. I mean, if you think about, what we spend just on a dozen arrows or, half dozen broadheads, and, all the gear, all the money that we spend, and yet we're not willing to spend some money on some coaching to get started out properly. I promise you that you will be so much more accurate with that bit of knowledge. And he's got a course.
You leave after an hour and you're 40% better than when you got there.
Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I went down there just before the season started here to have him help me, iron out some issues that I was, fighting through. And he was, he picked up things immediately just watching me shoot a couple arrows. It's like, okay, you need to make sure that your shoulders down. I was bringing it up on some shots and down, and just those little, minor things that you might not pick up yourself, but a trained coach will see, and was making, made a big difference for me from a shooting and accuracy standpoint.
Yeah. And it's so funny because like you said, you'll walk in and he'll say, hey, if you'll just do one little thing before you shoot, I mean, like just turn your torso just a little bit, it'll pack that shoulder down. And then you're like, holy, like that took you 14 seconds to change my shooting forever. Like,
right.
It's so crazy, man. And again, we're not here to just blow Tom up. We don't want to make him feel too good about himself, but Tom himself is one of the greatest guys
he is.
You will ever meet. I could tell you story after story after story. I'll share two. I was coming through Denver on a road trip with the kids. It got real late at night, and me and Tom probably shot longer than we should have. And we were leaving Denver, and Tom's like, why don't you just crash in my house? And I'm like, dude, I've got 3 kids that, like, these kids are animals. I'm not taking them into your house. And he was like, I've got grandkids. Like, you're fine. Like, just that type of just inviting. Like, he is just so incredibly kind and generous. And then one other time I did a giveaway for an elk hunt, and this just blew my mind. Like, I will never forget this till the day I die. I did a giveaway for an elk hunt. They got a free bow, all expense paid for elk hunt. Like, this was like a $14,000, $15,000 prize that this guy had just won. And I called the guy and I'm like, well, what bow do you want? And he said, I actually want to get a recurve. And I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. Like, great. And so I set him up with a recurve and got it headed his way. He calls me the night before I'm supposed to leave for this hunt. And he says, hey, my recurve just broke. And I'm like, what do you mean it broke? And send me pictures. And I'm like, oh crap, man. That's not good. And so like, I have no idea what to do. Like, he's like, I don't have another bow. And I'm like, oh gosh. Like, and so I asked him the route he's going, and like, he's going to be driving through Denver to get there. And I'm like, let me make a call. And I called Tom and I'm like, do you have a bow this guy can borrow? And he's like asking me his specs and all this stuff. And anyways, I wake up the next morning, call Tom. I'm like, did he make it through there? Like, did he get a bow? And he's like, the only one that would fit him was my personal bow. So that's what he's got. That's what he's taking with him. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, and Tom was just like, man, I can't let this guy miss out on an elk hunt. And I was just like, Tom,
that's awesome.
Dude, like just that type of world class, like do anything for you type of person. Just phenomenal guy, man. Now I want to get into just talking about your hunting journey. Cause you are a very well accomplished hunter. I got to see some of your seminar at the Pope and Young convention, which was just I could just walk by and see footage of you over a stinking ledge shooting deer. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Anyways, I do want to get into that, but I have a couple questions about traditional archery before we do.
Sure.
Walk me through tuning your bows. because your bows are a bit different. I found that out. I am a micro tuner, even when it comes to a recurve. I want to be able to shoot bear shafts at 40 yards and have them fly like darts. And I won't fletch them up and shoot them until they're ready. I was just having a lot of issues with your bow, and not your, like your bow was made great. I'm not saying that, but they tune differently. And I got so frustrated. I called Tom and I'm like, dude, I can't get this stalker to tune to save my life. And he jokingly, he said, yeah, it's because you've always shot bears. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he gave me some pointers. And anyways, apparently your bows are cut a little bit differently, centered a little bit differently than any bear that he's ever come across. So as soon as he changed that, I texted him back. I'm like, yep, flew perfect. So walk me through tuning a stalker and how people might encounter it being different.
Well, I'm assuming, I haven't played with bears too much, but I'm assuming that maybe they're only cut to center, not past center. Is that what you're encountering?
Yep.
Okay. So if you have a bow, like let's say a hill style longbow, a lot of them aren't even cut to center. So that means when you knock your arrow and and it's sitting on the shelf, not drawn, the arrow is sticking out. This is assuming you're a right-handed shooter, the arrow is sticking out far to the left there because it's laid up against the shelf of the bow. And because we'll just use cut to center. So your bow is 1.5 inches thick. Your strike plate is cut to 3/4 of an inch thick. So the bow then, the center line of your arrow is sticking out way to the left. Now, when you shoot that arrow's got to bend as it is propelled out of the bow. It's got to bend around the shelf there in order to be able to fly in a straight line and hit the target. Otherwise, it's going to be, shooting way out to the left there if the arrow spine is too stiff. So what happens with the right-handed shooter, as you release the arrow, the string slides to the left as it leaves your fingers, which then starts to put a indirect force on the back end of the arrow. So it's going to start to flex the shaft. And as it's really, if you haven't seen this before, just get on YouTube and search arrow paradox, and it's unbelievable to watch. It looks like a noodle as your arrow leaves the bow. Shooting a release, the arrow comes out much cleaner, much straighter. But when you're shooting fingers, you're putting that arrow through paradox, so it's flexing as it comes out of the bow. The less close your bow is to having the arrow lined up directly in line with the string, the more the arrow has to flex as it's coming out of the bow in order to travel in a straight line towards the target once it clears the bow. So the more important then arrow spine, the selection of arrow spine becomes, it's going to be more critical. So the less that your bow is cut to center, the more critical it is to nail your arrow spine. And getting your arrow spine correct is a factor of a number of things. One is just like the arrow spot build itself. So, we all know that, you can buy 600 spine, 500 spine, 400 spine, 300 spine on down like that. And so you want to start out in the correct, range, and referring to one of the arrow build charts there to get in the ballpark. But there are many additional things that'll affect your arrow spine, the overall arrow length. So the longer the arrow, the more limber that arrow is going to be. So you can take a 400 spine, cut it to 28 inches. It's going to be stiffer than a 400 spine cut to 30 inches. If you think about it as a fishing pole, and you put a weight out at the end of your fishing pole, or just take your fishing pole, no weight on the end of it, wiggle your fishing pole, then take a 1 ounce weight on the end of your fishing pole, and then wiggle it, and your your fishing pole is going to be way more limber. Same idea happens when you change the point weight on your the end of your arrow. The heavier the point weight you have, the weaker that's going to make your arrow perform from a spine standpoint. So you've got a number of different factors. So like my setup, I'm shooting 52 pounds. I've got a 28-inch arrow, and I've got a 200 grain point and a 90 grain outsert. My bow is cut an 1/8 inch past center. I can take that same setup, same arrow. I can change that point weight 50 grains, which is a pretty substantial amount. And my bare shafts will still shoot with my field points at 40 yards. I went out to the range yesterday morning, and I had it's kind of embarrassing to admit. I leave for hunting in 2 days. I was out there, what I call panic tuning. And I had been shooting in my backyard, and I just wasn't grouping the way I wanted to. Right. So I can't shoot past 30 yards where I'm at. So I had to go to my local archery range, which is an hour drive for me. So I got out there yesterday morning, and I had 2 sets of limbs, and I had 2 sets of arrows, and the limbs were different weights. And I had the arrows with the 95 grain outserts and ones with 50 grain outserts, the same shaft otherwise. So both sets of limbs, both sets of arrows, I was able to get those to tune pretty much the same as far as bare shaft and field points, which is a very forgiving setup when you're able to vary your draw weight by 4 pounds and your point weight by 50 grains and still get them to work. And that's partially due to how far past center that bow is cut. And I've got other bows that are cut 3/16 past center, so even further. And basically getting your bow or buying a bow that is cut past center will make your tuning a lot easier, but it is different than a bow that is not cut past center. So you're going to need different arrows. It's typically going to require a stiffer arrow the further it's cut past center, but it's also that kind of that range of spine is going to be wider than a bow that's not cut to center.
Now that was where my frustration lied. As soon as I told Tom I was getting a stalker, he said, "You're going to have to spine up." I said, "Okay." Mm-hmm. And so I start shooting, and honestly, like I was getting to the point where I'm like, okay, like this arrow, now it's everything that I was shooting though, I was getting weak. It was flying weak. And so I'm like, okay, this is getting too stiff to the point where now it's bouncing off the riser and I'm still showing weak. You know what I mean? Like that's what I thought. Like there's no way it has to be this stiff. And so I called Tom again. I just reached that point of just frustration. And I called Tom and he said, "Well, tell me your arrow setup." And I said, 400 spine, full length. I don't remember what I was shooting at the time, but I'm like 280, 250 out front. And he was like, "Okay. Do you have a bare weather rest there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Slap that on and see what happens." And I'm like, "Okay." Like I never shoot a rest though. And he's like, "That's not really why I want you to put it on. I just want you to have something to move the arrow out more." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I shoot it, and then I'm texting him like flying like a dart. Like, and that's what, then I call him back and he's like, "So stalkers, they cut inside of centers. You need a much stiffer arrow." He's like, "So I would either move to a 300 or keep shooting, build out that strike plate a little bit." Which a bare weather rest does, because it brings it out, however far. So yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to just talk about that, because if you're looking at going with a stalker, plan on spining up. I enjoy shooting a full length because I shoot point on. So I didn't want to cut it down much. But again, I was like, man, I'm getting to the point where because I had tried, I'm like, man, this is a 400 spine cut at 28.5 inches. Like this thing is incredibly stiff. But again, you're like, when you look at old school recurves, like you were just talking about, that were cut way outside of center, you had to shoot a 600 spine. You had to shoot, a 500 spine with only 150 grains out front. Like you had to have a really weak arrow. And so I had to just kind of break that mentality of like 600, 500 spines,
right?
Go to a 400, cut it back a little bit, get it stiff. So now it's at 30 and a half inches rather than 32 inches. And I'm shooting a 400 spine and it's flying like a stinking dart. So what I did, I didn't want to have to spend more money on arrows. So I'm like, well, I don't want to order 350s. So I just built out the strike plate a little bit with a weather rest, and the 400s are flying like darts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to your point, you can stiffen that arrow tons of different ways, or weaken that arrow tons of different ways. So if you get a bow out, and let's just talk about the tuning process a little bit. If you get a bow out and you shoot a barrel shaft at 10 yards, and that arrow is sticking if this is for right-handed shooters, if the knock is to the left, that means your arrow is flying too weak. If the knock is to the right, that means your arrow is flying too stiff. So if it's too weak, you can stiffen that up quite a bit of ways. Again, you can start cutting down the arrow. So if you have an ideal broadhead weight that you really don't want to change, start cutting down the arrow. Or you can lower the point weight, because by taking weight off, again, imagine the fishing pole wiggle. By taking weight off, you're going to stiffen that. So start lowering your point weight. Or you can look at moving your arrow in or out. So like if you look at, some bows even have an adjustable strike plate, like the Eichler, it has an adjustable strike plate. You can move that strike plate out, which will then stiffen your arrow. Now, to make it weaker, you would go the opposite. Add weight, get a longer arrow, take material out of the strike plate to bring it inside of center. So there are several things you can do. And I find a lot of guys are stuck on one of the things, and it causes frustration for them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they're stuck on only changing point weight. And I'm like, well, maybe you need to change point weight.
That's the easiest one.
Yeah.
Unless you have a big investment in broadheads,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
which is why the Three Rivers test kit is like super cool. I mean, you can change all the different weights, try the different arrows, try the different lengths. But yeah, there are tons of different ways. And that's why traditional archery is so fun. Cause listen, I can tune my wife's compound arrow to my compound. Like if you just do enough work, you can do it. I mean, it's all just moving cams and putting twists and doing this. But with a recurve, you really have to figure out, what does this bow like?
Yeah. And for guys that are interested in really kind of getting a greater depth of knowledge on tuning, the Push, you mentioned them earlier. They have a tuning series that Cody Greenwood has done on their platform. It's like $200, and it is really, really in depth and will teach you everything you need to know, and is broken down into, a bunch of short video segments there, very digestible and really well done, well thought out, in a fantastic information. And again, $200, that seems like a lot of money, but man, when you are close to hunting season and you can't get your broadheads to group the way you want, you'd spend thousands, for that same knowledge. And so to dive into that, plenty early when you have the time to do the tuning, you'll be very thankful that you spent the money.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll just say this, like, I want to shoot as stiff as I can. I want to go as on the stiffer side, because think about it. It's easier to push a stiffer arrow through something than something that's got more wiggle to it. Yep. So you will get better penetration with a stiffer arrow. That's inevitable with a compound or a recurve. The stiffer arrow that you can shoot, I understand, again, I can get my wife's 400 spines to fly good out of my compound, but the stiffer that arrow is, the better it is going to penetrate that animal. Now, I heard somebody say this one time: when you shoot, if you see your arrow hit the target and wiggle, That means it had more in it than you gave it. You know what I mean? It had more, it wanted to keep trying to push through, but it had it was too weak of a spine. I want that arrow to hit and just stick in the target. Cause that means it's pushing and punching through that target. It doesn't have that wiggle in the back end when it hits the target. So, just again, just a tip, I guess I would say is shoot as stiff as you can. Guys, there are a lot of names that you can trust in the archery world. However, not many stick out as much as the name Lancaster Archery. Guys, if you've been around archery or bow hunting at all, you've probably heard of Lancaster. Why? That's because they're experts, and that's because they're your one-stop shop for all things archery. I've never needed something and not found it at Lancaster. I've also been able to find reviews and tips using the product that I needed that Lancaster had. Guys, Lancaster is phenomenal. They are experts in the trade. They know the equipment because they use the equipment. And you can pretty much get anything you've ever needed archery related at lancasterarchery.com. You can also learn about the products you need on their YouTubes, in their videos, on their social media. You can also get tips about how to use the products. Guys, Lancaster is a phenomenal one-stop shop. And here's what I'll tell you. Sometimes you gotta be mindful of who you're taking information from. You don't have to worry about it at all when it comes to Lancaster. I put full faith in the guys over at Lancaster. They know the products. They sell the products. They give you advice on the products. They give you support on the products. You can call and ask them anything. They'll get you lined out. They'll sell it to you, and then they'll support you even after you buy it and you need help figuring it out. Guys, go check out lancasterarchery.com for everything you need archery related. Now, that being said, having to have gone to a bare weather rest, I've never hunted with a rest on a recurve. What kind of rest do you recommend? If somebody wants to shoot a rest, what kind of rest would you say, put this on my bow?
Well, the springies are really popular. The issue is then you have to drill and tap your riser. So it's not something that, typically could be done or recommended to do like in your home garage or whatever. We do offer that on our bows there. But if you're just wanting to try something like that out, the bare weather rest is a great one to be able to just stick on without a major commitment of drilling a hole and permanently altering your bow.
Now, don't get me wrong. So let me ask you this. If somebody calls you and they want to get into this, do you recommend shooting off the shelf or do you recommend a rest?
I probably north of 95% of my customers shoot off the shelf.
Yeah. I always have. Now, and don't get me wrong. You can build out that strike plate without adding a rest on.
Sure.
That was just the quickest, easiest thing at the time for me to do. You can always add padding behind the shelf or behind the strike plate there. Mm-hmm. And you can always get thicker strike plates. Like you can always order those, find those, which is probably what I will do. I'll honestly probably go back to the shelf and just build out a strike plate. I've even listened in a pinch. One time I had a bow and I needed to build out the strike plate a little bit in a pinch, and I didn't have anything to build out the strike plate. So I just cut the flipper off of the bare weather rest and used that rubber piece as the strike plate, and it built it out just enough. So you can build out that strike plate for sure.
Yeah. A couple little tips here, when it comes to that. So talking about building out the strike plate, what I've done is in the past, I've taken just a wooden matchstick, peeled the material off the strike plate, stuck the matchstick behind that, stuck it back down, and then been able to build out my and that, obviously is going to affect your tune there. So, you want to take that into account there. But I remember specifically, I had one bow that I was shooting, and with the setup that I was shooting, I was impacting to the right of where I was aiming. And so I built out my strike plate and the tune still worked, and it took care of my my sight picture issue there. Yeah. Also, another thing a lot of guys have issues with is not being able to get rid of a knock high tear. And one thing, like a lot of times what happens is you're getting fletch contact with that bottom end. If you're shooting 3 feathers, the common way to nock your arrows, your cock feather is facing out. So that what happens is that bottom hen feather drags heavily across your shelf as it's clearing the bow. And if you look at slow motion video, as that arrow is flexing coming out of the bow, the back end of your arrow, the nock end of your arrow is nowhere near the side of your strike plate. It's probably 3/8 to half an inch outside of your strike plate as it's flexing going around the shelf there. So what happens is that bottom hen feather drags across the bottom of your shelf. And a lot of times that's what's causing your tail high tear. So what you can do is one of 2 things. One is take your arrow and knock it, rotate it 180 degrees. So your cock feather is facing in, which when you look at it, you're going to think you're going to get a ton of contact with that cock feather hitting your strike plate. But in reality, that center line of your shaft is well outside of the, of running down the side of your strike plate there. So you're actually going to get better clearance with that cock feather just barely brushing your strike plate and that hen feather being outside now of the edge of your shelf. So you'll more than likely get improved arrow flight that way. If you're still having some issue, then what I'll do is I'll take a piece of like 1/8 inch leather, like say belt thickness leather, and then just cut a little it'd be an extra large matchstick sized, and then lift up your rest material, that your adhesive rest material, and put a piece of that going perpendicular to your shelf there, right above the throat of your grip. So it basically elevates, gives you a slightly elevated off the shelf rest. And a lot of times then that will improve your fletch clearance there as well and take care of a nagging tail high issue.
Yeah. I've got bows, down in the basement, and I can show you underneath every single shelf material, there's toothpicks underneath them, just to, again, give you more of a, and really it just comes down to common sense. Like, I want my arrow to be flying across the smallest point that it can be flying across, rather than sliding across an entire shelf. Which I'll say this, your shelf is built up nicely to where it has just a peak, if you will, on that shelf to fly off of, which I really liked, because sometimes you see them and you're like, man, my arrow has an inch of contact across this shelf. So a lot of guys, they build their bows with a flat shelf. Flat shelf in both dimensions. So if you're looking at it from a profile standpoint, it looks like just a straight right angle cut going across the riser that your arrow fits on. And then also when you're looking at it from the shooting position, it's a right angle in relation to the bow itself. And so it's, can be easy for your arrow to fall off the shelf. And we back bevel our shelves, as well as put a radius crown to the profile of the shelf there also. And then we focus that contact point right above the throat of the grip there, so that it's harder to induce torque that will, impact your alignment of your arrow. Yeah. No, I have really, really enjoyed shooting this bow, and I can't wait to just start killing stuff with it. So, that being said, what are some of the highlight reels? And again, I say highlight reels because when I was walking through that convention center and seeing some of that footage, I'm like, holy cow, man. Like, what's some of the coolest predicaments you've ever found yourself in with a bow in your hand?
Well, twice I've been like literally spitting distance from elk as they were, coming in frontal on me, and I didn't want to take a frontal shot, and had to, I was already at full draw and had to hold myself together as I was really questioning whether I was going to get literally stepped on by these bulls. And both of them, they, turned last moment and went by me broadside as they were coming into a cow decoy and a collar, and then was able to get shots at them just as they passed by me almost broadside. And we captured both of those instances on video. But man, I'll tell you, nerve wracking to say the least, and terrifying, especially the first time it happened. The bull didn't look like he was going to run me over. It looked like he was going to walk past me. I was just nervous as hell that I wasn't going to get a shot. And the second one, when this bull came around the tree, I was literally right in his path, and the bull was coming dead on straight at me. But I think he just thought I was like a tree stump or something. So he kind of veered around me, and then I was able to swing on him and shoot him. And it was, probably a sub 12-foot shot on that bull. And the other one was even closer.
Jiminy Chris. Okay. At what point, if a bull's coming, because I actually had this thought, and this bull only came like 9 yards from me. But I was still thinking, like, at what point do I start moving and scare this bull away? Like, So when that bull is that close to you, at what point do you hey, scare the bull off?
I think if he would have got, a few steps close, because when he came around the tree, he was probably 6 or 7 yards from me. And then when he probably got somewhere in that 4 to 5 yard range, then he turned and went past me at, the 3 to 4 yard range. Had he have kept coming in that, where it didn't look like he was going to turn, I would have had to have done something. Because his head was low enough, I don't think I could have shot him, and got that frontal shot angle that I wanted. So it would have been, the name of that video was self-defense on that one, because it literally almost came down to that.
Man. And that's something like, and again, I don't want to just kind of harp on why we shoot recurves, but you just find yourself in so much cooler of a situation. Like, you find yourself in, there's so many times where if I have a deer at 30 yards, the hunt's over with a compound. Mm-hmm. If I have a deer at 30 yards of the recurve, my hunt's just started, it's just beginning. And so, man, you find yourself in some really cool situations.
Yeah. I try to set particularly with mule deer, when I'm doing spot and stock stuff, I have a lot more control over the situation. So I'll wait until I get a deer that's bedded in a spot that's really conducive for me to stalk. And the area I hunt in Colorado has got a fair bit of rim rock. And the bucks will bed kind of tucked up against the rim rock. And so I'll be able to, do a big loop around, come up from behind them, and literally get up on top of the rock that they're bedded under, and then have, a 15-foot shot, sometimes less, where, I'm coming right over the top of the deer, and they have no idea I'm in the neighborhood. And then there's other situations where a deer might be up feeding or something, and I have to take a longer shot. But the furthest I've killed a mule deer with my stick bow is 40 yards, and that was one that was up feeding. And then the closest has been, probably 10 feet or something, that was bedded, tucked up under a rock.
Jeez. Okay, mechanically wise, I've only had one instance where this kind of happened, and I was in a tree stand, but I had this deer come a lot closer than I anticipated. And I figured out real quick, man, I've never practiced with a recurve, trying to get my body to where I'm shooting straight down.
Yeah.
So mechanically wise, what kind of tips do you give people to learn how to shoot that way?
So what I'll do is I will draw my bow like horizontally, as if I was shooting at a horizontal target, and then I'll bend at the waist and lean over that way, rather than pointing straight down and trying to draw my bow. And one of the things you really have to be cognizant of if you have a steep downhill shot like that is that lower limb. I had a shot I blew on a buck. It was super steep. I was actually shooting I had my bottom limb between my legs as I was shooting, but I was canting my bow and I actually caught the inside of my calf on my left leg when I shot. Fortunately, it didn't really hurt, but it certainly didn't do much for arrow flight.
Yeah.
And I ended up missing that buck.
The first hunt that I went on with my recurve was javelina and deer down in South Texas. And I was sitting in a borrowed blind, and this was, we come into this property, and it was just kind of like hey, here's the property, go out and hunt it however you want. And so we spent one day just kind of scouting, setting up blinds, figuring out where to hunt. And my buddy pulls this blind out of the box, brand new out of the box. And he's like, dude, we need to put this blind right here. And we brushed it in, we do all, so the next morning we're waking up like, where are you going to hunt? Where are you going to hunt? And me and the brother of the guy that put the blind up, that's where we were assigned. That's where we went, was that blind. And we had these javelinas run in. This was gonna be my first recurve kill. I was stoked, been practicing all year long. These javelina come out and I go to shoot and you hear the most god awful noise, and miss the javelina by a mile. And I'm like, what just happened, dude? Like, I was so confident in my shooting abilities. I'm like, I couldn't have missed. Like, what happened? And my buddy is dying laughing. We're in his brother's blind that he just opened, brand new. And he looks up and there's like a 2-foot tear all the way through the top of that blind because that limb just ripped through that as it was coming through. And I was like, crap, dude, what do we do? And so we just got black duct taped it together. At the end of that hunt, we put it back in the box, packed it back up. It wasn't until like 2 years later, he texts in the group and he's like, who shot through my blind? I'm like, yeah, that was my bad, man.
Yeah. Longer bows in blinds are tough to deal with,
they certainly are.
Yep. Yeah,
Certainly
I built a lot of short bows for guys that are hunting out of ground blinds because they, are way more maneuverable. Fortunately, there's some good blinds now that are relatively tall that are available on the market that will work well for shooting a stick bow out of. But even then, if one comes in through one of the side windows or you got to, lean a little bit to get a shot out, it still pays dividends to have a shorter bow in a ground blind. And I always try to talk people into going like longer in overall bow length. If you look at the Olympians, none of them are shooting short recurves. They're shooting, 70-inch recurves. And there's a reason for that. You have less string angle. They're smoother. They're more comfortable to shoot, and you can just shoot them more accurately. A shorter bow. I had a guy in Australia I sold a bow for, two, I should say. And, I was at a bow show down there and he picked up, he's like, man, I really want a short bow. And I was like, okay. So I had a 56-inch and he's like, oh man, this is great. It's like, it's angry. That's how he described shooting it.
Not terribly short. It is short, but it's not. But
if you take the same exact bow, same riser, just different limb length, in a 56 or say at the other end, a 64-inch, you will see a massive difference in how those two bows shoot just by having different limb lengths. Same draw weight, same everything, same riser, but just having a different limb length. That longer bow is going to be way smoother. You're going to shoot it more accurate, but there certainly are places for short bows, in a hunting situation.
Yeah. What is about the shortest bow you'll build?
54 is the shortest that we build. Yeah. I've thought about playing around, with it, but there are certainly guys that shoot, or like shorter bows, but I don't have much of that market share, even though we do build, down to 56 really. You have to take our short 13-inch riser and put our 56-inch limbs, and you'll end up with a 54-inch there. And we just don't sell many of them. So it doesn't give me a lot of incentive to, build a specific short bow. We sell a lot more in the 60 and 62-inch range.
Yeah. Now, I've oftentimes thought this, and this might be a really stupid question. And if it is, just say you're stupid and we'll move on. Why not? Like, why can't you make a much shorter riser that way, even on a shorter bow, you still have longer limbs. There's more flex in the limbs. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So we do, offer, like I said, that 13-inch riser, and with the 56-inch limbs. The problem is that you still have to fit your sight window and your grip, as well as attachment points for your limbs. So everything gets compacted. Your handle gets smaller. Your sight window is really small. And then you still have your limbs attached. We have a 12-inch riser on our A&H line. So I've got 3 different bow companies. I've got Stalker Stickbows, I've got A&H Archery, and I've got Dryad bows. And in the Dryad, we have a 13-inch ILF riser. And in the A&H line, we have our Spitfire, which has a 12-inch riser. And that is a nice compact bow. We build longbow limbs down to 56-inch on that platform there. On the Stalker end, our shortest riser is 13 inches. But I bet you I don't build 1 or 2 risers a year in that 13-inch configuration. We build a lot more in the A&H line, for the Spitfire riser there. But mechanically, you can only get so short. If you go with a one-piece bow, you can do more with that than you can with a takedown, because then you're not having to worry about how you're going to attach your limbs to your riser, which takes up some of that room there. So doing a shorter one-piece longbow or recurve, you're able to build them shorter, but they're, at some point you do have to deal with your limitations there.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, and here's always kind of been my argument is like, man, if you go to a 56-inch bow, I'm shooting a 62-inch bow. Mm-hmm. That's only 6 inches shorter. Like, that's that much shorter. Yeah. I mean, does it really as far as maneuverable, holy cow.
Maneuverability?
Yeah, that. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Uh-huh. As far as being able to get it in and out and shoot in tight spaces, does it really make that big of a difference? And maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, but I mean, I know that even on the compound side, dudes are like, oh, I need a shorter axle to axle bow. I'm going to shoot the 30-inch. And I'm like, okay, well, I shoot a 32-inch. Like, that's that much difference. Like, right. You really think that's going to kill you? Like, as far as getting it in and out of a blind, or like, I don't know, man. I've never been the one to say like, I need a short bow here, To
me, the trade-off in degradation of accuracy, comfort, and shootability, it's not worth it. I actually went longer this year. Normally I shoot a 60-inch bow. This year I'm shooting a 62. And I think that if you are like a ground blind guy, or you're shooting off your knees quite a bit, then, you're going to enjoy the benefit of a shorter bow. But other than that, I would definitely go longer rather than shorter. That's my take on it.
Yeah. And, to your argument, like 62 is not a terribly long bow.
No.
I mean, you can get that in and out of places pretty easily. And going from a 60 I shot a 60 for a long time, and going from a 60 to a 62, I was like, oh, this is going to be hard. And then I'm like, I'm looking at the bows. I'm like, okay, that's that much on each end. Like, right. That's what we're worried about. Like,
negligible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I have a blind that's 6 feet tall, so I can shoot a recurve out of it very comfortably. And I took the Stalker out, which is, again, just 2 inches longer than what I've been shooting. And I'm like, that's literally that much of a turn. Like, turning it that much more gives me the clearance. Like, so I've just always been the one. And again, to your point, like compounds or recurves, I'm like, the trade-off is not worth it. The trade-off of being able to shoot a comfortable bow with a very, very little string angle. It's just, it's not worth it. Yeah, it's just not worth it to me. I mean, never has been.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that one.
So what's your fall look like? I know you head out in just a couple days.
Yeah. So I leave. So today's Friday. I leave Sunday after church, heading for Nevada. I've got a couple of pack goats that I'm going to be renting lined up. I'll be picking them up in Nevada and then headed for the mountain, meeting my buddy at the trailhead, and we're packing in for 12 days. We're going to be filming the hunt. I'm super excited. I haven't been back in this range in 3 or 4 years, and we're going to be exploring some new country that I've been wanting to go to for the last 20 or so years and just have never made it into this other area. So I'm excited to see some new country. We're going to be really mobile. We're going to be camping. Very likely we're going to be camping in a new place every night or almost every night. So we're going to cover a lot of country. And I think, with 12 days, that should give us, some decent opportunities. I'm hoping anyway. There was a bad winter kill 3 or 4 years ago in there. So I think deer numbers will be down. Deer quality will likely be down, but I'm still totally amped to see what we can turn up.
That's cool. Are you a whitetail guy? Or do you just?
I've done some whitetail hunting. It's been a few years since I've been out. Most of the time when I go, it's usually like just a meat hunt, going to pile up a bunch of does to put in the freezer. I absolutely love whitetail, and my wife loves them even more. So she's never one to turn down me being able to go out and stack up some does. I haven't done it in a while. I've been pretty tied up doing the Western stuff. After my Nevada hunt, I get home. I'm home for a week, and then I leave for Colorado for another 12-day hunt. And then that's for mule deer, and it'll be a pack in, wilderness hunt that we'll be filming that one also. I get home from that hunt and I'm home for 5 days. And then I go back out for elk for another 12 days. And again, that'll be another wilderness, wilderness hunt that we'll be filming also. So I've been collecting quite a few different hunts on my YouTube channel, the Stalker Stickbows YouTube channel. So, if anyone's looking at all, I'm trying to think, I think every hunt that I've done that's on that channel is all, public land DIY stuff. And, there's a lot of good content. Mule deer in Colorado and Nevada, and then elk in Colorado.
Very cool. The reason I ask about whitetail is because going back to your statement, there's not a lot of whitetail or not a lot of traditional only hunts. There's a place in Oklahoma, in McAllister, Oklahoma.
Yep.
And it's on a military base there. And they have a traditional only hunt, and I've never done it. I know several people who have, several of my friends who've done it. And it sounds like a phenomenally fun hunt, and they are super traditional. Like from my understanding going in, like they check all of your equipment. I don't think you can have a stabilizer. I don't think you can have a rest. I think it's just as traditional as can be.
Wow.
But like they check your vehicles and but then from what I hear, it's like, it says for a whitetail hunt, at least it's, you get that kind of like remote, out in the wilderness type area. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They, you have to go in and camp. You can't leave the facility past X amount of time. So it's like, you're in there with the guys and you're sharing camp and it's, just kind of like that more backcountry feel of a camp that you get. So I really want to put in for that. And the reason I ask is because you're more likely to get drawn if you have a group. So we might have to apply one day and go kill some whitetails.
There's a Facebook thread for that hunt that I kind of follow and see kind of what people are talking about on it. And that's definitely intriguing. Utah started a primitive archery or primitive weapon season this year. So they have, if I remember correctly, it's, they have it broken out into firearm and archery. And if I remember correctly, it's so it's definitely like they have an archery. It's only traditional archery. And then they have a firearm, which is muzzle loader, but it's much more restricted than like Utah, anything goes, as far as muzzle loader regulations. But I believe that the muzzle loader is more restricted, and there might be shotgun slug that's incorporated in with that as well. And then Oregon has I I know they have a mule deer hunt that is traditional only, and I think they might have an elk hunt. I'm not certain about that, but there are, a few opportunities. And I think that, it's a great way to offer more opportunities without as much of a hit on the resources, just because the hunter success rate with traditional archery equipment is lower, but you can still offer more, more hunter opportunity without tapping the game population as much.
Yeah. No, it really is. And that's why I wish more states would introduce it. Even just a couple weeks, a couple weeks longer, a couple weeks more. But I wish more states would do it. And that's why some of those opportunities are really cool.
Yeah. What I'd love to see, like in my home state of Colorado. So I think it was about 5 years ago, they changed the season dates. It used to open for mule deer and elk for archery. It used to open the last Saturday in August. And then there was a lot of, the Colorado Bowhunter Association, they really wanted that, and it would close the last Sunday in September. Well, what would happen is, depending on how that last Sunday fell, it could close as early as the 24th of September. So, Colorado obviously got a ton of rabid elk hunters. And when you'd get your season cut back that early, you'd lose a good portion of the rut, that was happening later in September. So they pushed hard. They got the season changed. But what they did was they moved it from that last Saturday in August to September 2nd. So now it's fixed date, September 2nd through September 30th. So now, for a guy like myself, who's a fanatical mule deer hunter, now we've lost that first, what was that first week of the season. Now I'm that first, 10-day hunt in September. I'm encountering a lot of hardhorn bucks towards the end of that first week, which I literally never saw a hardhorn deer the first 10 days of the mule deer hunt when I was hunting Colorado before. The greater impact is that now, depending on when those, how the calendar aligns there, I've had the muzzleloader hunt fall in that first week of archery, because the muzzleloader guys, they come in, I believe it's the second Saturday in September, and then it runs through that third Sunday. So now the muzzleloader hunt, you can't get in, depending on how the weekdays fall. You may not be able to get in a full week or 10-day hunt during the archery season before the muzzleloader guys come in. And I literally had a guy shoot at a buck I was stalking that first, it was super frustrating, And so now during archery season, during that first, week or 10 days of archery, you're contending with muzzleloader hunters towards the end of your week-long hunt.
Oh, man. Yeah, that sucks, dude.
Yep.
That really does.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I can't tell you how excited I am to just get out there and there's just something different. Like, there's a different feeling about hunting with a recurve. It just, I don't know. It makes you feel like a man. That's all I can say.
It definitely brings you back to your roots, and that feeling of accomplishment, whether you kill a doe or a buck. I mean, I had a period when I was transitioning. I was still shooting a compound, and I had an Iowa deer tag, and it comes along with a doe tag, or a buck tag and a doe tag. And so I spent 12 days chasing bucks, and finally killed a buck the last evening of the hunt. And I had the morning hunt the following day, and I sat in a stand with my recurve and shot a whitetail doe the next morning. And I was just as excited shooting that whitetail doe with my stick bow as I was killing that buck after waiting for 12 days for an opportunity.
And I'll just say this. There have been too many times when I was in the transition period two instances, I was going on an elk hunt and I was kind of like between the recurve and the compound. And my wife said, well, which one are you going to take? And I said, I don't know. She said, which one would you rather shoot an animal with? And I said, my recurve for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, then why wouldn't you take that? And I'm like, well, what if a bull's at 40 yards? I'm going to be mad, or 60 yards. I'm going to be mad that I can't just plug it and come home. And through conversation, I said to her, I would rather shoot a cow with my recurve than a bull with my compound. Mm-hmm. And she said, then take your recurve, stupid. And I'm like, okay. Like, and then I remember another time I was just whitetail hunting here around the house, and I have a nice buck. I mean, he's 135, 140, 14 yards from my stand, just perfect broadside. I could have shot him 19 times over. And I remember thinking to myself as he walked away, if I had my recurve, I would have shot him every day of the week. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to shoot him with my compound. He wasn't big enough to shoot in my compound, right? You know? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, if that's the mentality, then you need to take the recurve every stinking time. Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to get that much more gratification out of it, why would I not want to take it? Like, yeah, it might be harder. I might have more missed opportunities. I might have more deer at 30, 40 yards that I can't shoot. Like, but if the gratification is going to be that much higher, why on earth would I not do it? Like, why would I not want to? So yeah, I mean, that's 100% of the reason. And I would just encourage everybody to try it. Ever since I've started the new platform away from bear, I have not talked enough about trying traditional archery. And I would encourage every single person, even if you're not going to hunt with it, like, just get one and shoot it, because it's so fun. It is so fun.
It is, you know, and I think like just a tip for somebody who's interested in picking it up, pick up so if you're shooting, let's just say hypothetically, a 70-pound compound, buy a 40-pound recurve, even 35-pound recurve.
I was going to say even 30, 35. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And, get on Amazon and you could pick up a Samick Sage for $160 or something like that.
Bingo.
And buy something cheap, buy it light, get some, don't even worry so much like about your arrows being perfectly spined. It's not going to make that massive of a difference if your arrows come out porpoising or fishtailing or whatever. Get something so you can just start, getting out there and shooting it and trying it, seeing if you like it, if it's going to stick. Get a little bit better quality arrows there that are properly spined and then keep at it. You'll have a better idea after shooting, getting a starter bow of what works for you and what you like as far as, moving into a custom bow. And then you can bump up your draw weight and then, be more fully committed, but you're not going to feel bad dumping $160 and deciding it's not worth, not something you want to pursue. But I guarantee you, if you are an archer and you like shooting bows, you're going to love shooting stick bows too.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip, man. I tell everyone, like, everyone that calls me and they're like, hey, I want to get into this, what do I need to buy? And I'm like, a Samick Sage at 30 pounds. And they're like, well, I can't hunt with that. I'm like, no, you can't. But you're going to build better mechanics than trying to overbow yourself in the beginning. And then slowly build up. And the reason I say start with the Samick is because you can buy additional limbs for like $50. So you can buy that initial bow. You get the riser and the 30-pound limbs for 160. And then as you, really build those really good mechanics, then go up to 35 pounds, build really good mechanics, go up to 40, 45. And then, like when you're ready to go and really do and spend time hunting, buy a stalker and invest that money. And like this, I want to land at 48 pounds. I want to land at 49 pounds. I want to land, wherever. This is where I want to be. Buy a really good custom bow. And here's what I'll say. A really good custom bow is still a whole lot cheaper than decking out a new prime with, a dialed sight and a Hamsky rest or a Vapor Trail rest. Like, you're looking at, $4,000 to deck out a top of the line compound. So it's still a lot cheaper than going that route. And you have a bow that's going to last you a lifetime. And you have a bow that, listen, I don't keep a compound for nothing. At the end of the year, I sell it and get a new one. Recurves are beautiful. Recurves are a piece of art. Recurves are something that you want hanging on your wall. Recurves are something that you want to show off. You want to show the woodwork. You want to show, man, every single person that walks into my shop in here, they look at all the compounds hanging, my wife's and my 2 compounds. They look at those and they're like, yeah, compound. And then they see the stalker on the back wall and they're like, can I pick it up? And I'm like, absolutely. And they're like looking at the wood and they're like, this is so beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, because that right there is machined. That right there is a work of art. Like, that's the difference. And man, it's worth it. Let me tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a total wood junkie, and that's part of the thing that appeals to me so much about building bows is all of the different species of woods from around the world that I get to use. And I'm literally like on Facebook, on the, and on websites and browsing, buying individual boards, individual pieces of wood, not like, ordering material is like it's a commodity saying, hey, send me 100 board feet of walnut. I'm picking out the individual board that I'm going to be buying, by photographs. I'm having them send me pictures of all 4 edges of the board so that I can see what I'm buying ahead of time and whether it's going to be, highly figured enough or have enough color variation and interesting grain to me, for me to want to put into one of my bows. Cause it takes me the same amount of effort to build a bow if I was to go down to Home Depot and buy a 2x4 and just use a plain piece of pine as it is if I, have a beautiful piece of Buckeye burl and Turkish walnut, or something to that effect. Same amount of effort from a wood standpoint in workmanship, but the finished effect is massively different when you have some really unique material to work with.
Do you remember, I get asked all the time and I don't remember. Do you remember what materials you built mine out of? What wood? If not, I'll grab it and show you.
Yeah. I want to say it was, tiger myrtle, if I remember correctly, was one of the materials, which myrtle comes from Southwest Oregon. And, yeah, that's tiger myrtle, and the camera is going in and out, so I can't see what the other one is. It's kind of dark on exposure. It might be walnut on the right in the center part of the flare. I can't tell from here. The lighting, unfortunately, is I can't see that center material, but the tiger myrtle is on the limb veneers and on the, back and belly on the riser there on the grip portion of it.
And just, this thing is absolutely gorgeous, man. Like, I can't even, everybody that's asked me, and of course, Selway made the custom typical sportsman quiver, but everybody that's asked me, they're like, man, what material is that? I'm like, I wish I knew. I said, I just told South what I wanted and he built the sexiest bow I've ever seen. So that's what I got. I said, I like wood and black, and that's what I got.
Yeah. We're pretty well known for our woods, having some of the most beautiful in the industry. And I work hard, to source it to get that. Cause like I said, I mean, I can go down into the lumber yard and buy some wood, but, and then build bows out of it. But to me, a lot of the beauty comes in the wood selection itself. And so I work hard to try to source the prettiest stuff that I can find.
Yeah. But honestly, you almost shoot yourself in the foot, because you almost make them so pretty that I don't even want to take it out and hunt with it. That's the problem with it.
I built a bow for Chris Denham, who owns Western Hunter magazine, and he pulled it out and put it together and showed his wife, and his wife's like, we're putting that up in the living room.
Yeah, that's again, because it's a work. This is a piece of art. Like, that's what's so much different about these bows than. Oh, by the way, I was going to ask you, what do you recommend? How far into the string groove do you put? Which I'm going to change this out. I like to put the Velcro, soft part of the Velcro instead of the moleskin. But how far in the string groove do you go up with those?
I don't personally use it at all, but you can run it all the way up to the yoke there. I mean, you'd be fine there.
Okay. Yeah. I just, I don't know.
Yeah,
I saw Eichler do it, and I
I'm
thought,
looking
man, if
at
Eichler does it, I do it.
Yeah, I'm looking at your clicker setup. I need to get you one of my new clickers. So I came up with a design that the drawback of clickers is that if you need to, if somebody that has a longer draw length than you draws your bow and hyperextends your clicker blade, then it won't click anymore. Or if you're hiking, and you have a branch that grabs your string, your clicker string, and bends your clicker blade, then you have to. It's a real pain in the butt to deal with. I've come up with a system that you can change out that blade in 60 seconds and not have to pull your string apart or anything like that. And I sell them on my website, but I'll have to mail you one. And it's called the Quick Click. And I also have little repair kits which come with blades, and it's just super fast to be able to switch out that clicker blade if you ever need to because you've bent. Actually cost me a monster bull elk one year. I had bent my clicker blade and I didn't fix it. And the next day I had a shot opportunity. It was kind of the outer end of my shooting range and shot high because I think I just drew too far being excited.
Yeah. No, that's another thing. And people will notice, like, that's something I'm anal about as well. I don't have this isn't tied off yet. Because I really adjust these. I'm super, super anal about when that clicks. And that's something that I've always kind of pride myself in. Tom, the very first lesson, he said, I'll tell you what, like, most people don't have their clickers set up, like, where as soon as they start rolling over their back shoulder, it clicks. And that's a beautiful thing how you have it set up. And so I actually love helping people set up clickers. Cause you they either have it right at their draw length. They don't have any room to start rotating back before it clicks. But, that's something that I really love. I need to just put out some videos about how to set up a clicker. It sounds like I need to do it with your clicker. So, yeah, that's something I always, I started that as a training process, and then I just kind of realized I like it on all my bows. So I just shoot it on all of them all the time.
Yeah. I use it as a trigger, to tell me when to shoot, but most importantly as a draw check there so that I'm pulling my bow back the same distance every time.
Yeah, 100%. And most people are like, won't that scare the deer off? Like that click? And I'm like, well, that breaks as my shot goes off. So like when it clicks, the shot broke. So it's not like they're not just hearing a click and then wait 3 seconds and then shoot. So it's just part of the shot sound.
Yeah. The blades so the clickers that I sell, I've got small pieces of Velcro that are stuck on the blade. So it really helps silence that click too. Yeah. So it's still audible, but much, much quieter than that one that you're shooting or that you just tugged on right there.
Yeah. And that's something that I usually, once I have the bow set up and, this is what I'm running, how I'm running it, I'll take I'm just giving tips because I'm going to switch to yours and try it. But I'll take the blade off, wrap it in duct tape, and then put it back on. That way the duct tape just kind of muffles the pop a little bit. But yeah, I've never had an issue with it where, because again, like once that click goes off, the shot has broke. So it's like they don't hear that apart from the shot sequence. So very cool, man. Well, hey, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you got some bows to build before you get out on the mountains. So good luck this fall, man. And where can people follow along with your hunts that you're going on?
Yeah. So I've got obviously Facebook, Instagram. My Instagram page is probably the most active one there. Then the YouTube channel, the Stalker Stickbows YouTube channel. I post up all my hunts there that I have on video. I've actually got one in the Full Draw Film Tour right now that I'll post up to my YouTube channel, probably third week of September ish there. I think that's about when the tour wraps up, and then we're able to put them on our YouTube. And then I also have a podcast, the Western Bowhunter podcast, and we're going to be doing semi-live podcasts, like daily updates from the field on this Nevada hunt. And I'll probably continue to do that through the mule deer hunt and the elk hunt there. We're actually on the goats, we're packing in a Starlink Mini. So I don't have cell service up there, but we'll be able to upload the videos, and my editor back home will get them posted up. So you'll be able to, hopefully with no more than like a 12 to 24 hour delay, get to kind of hear what's going on in the field there as we're pushing through our fall hunting seasons here.
Very, very cool, man. And guys, I would just encourage you, watch his footage. Cause again, like I was sitting there like a kid in a candy store, just watching this incredible footage. But also go check out Stalker Stickbows. If you are in the market for a good stick bow, I'll tell you this, you can either buy a Stalker and be happy, or you can buy another bow and wish you would have bought a Stalker. So that's where it's at. And if you're just not getting into this, again, we've just kind of given you a rundown. Don't just immediately jump on Stalker Stickbows and order the best of the best recurves. Start lighter, and again, you don't want to buy, 4 of these. So start with a cheaper bow where you can build good mechanics. I've gotten to the point where I don't even like coaching people in a compound anymore, because like you said, I can have, a 13-year-old kid shooting softballs at 20 yards in about an hour. There's no gratification there. It's fun. I mean, I love shooting compounds. I love stretching it out and shooting distance. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes to teaching somebody, I adore teaching people how to shoot a recurve. Not that I'm the best, not that I'm a coach, nothing along the lines, but just sharing with you my journey and my tips and my tricks. So if you're wanting to get into this, don't hesitate to reach out. You can message me on Instagram and ask me any kind of questions you have. I spend a lot of time on the phone with people, just helping them with what bow to order, with what arrows to shoot, with tuning issues they're having, with mechanic issues they're having. And then if it gets too hard for me, I'll just tell you to call Tom. So again, reach out to me if you have any questions. I love helping people with this stuff because this right here is change your life. It'll change your life. It'll make you love archery again. It'll make you remember why you do what you do. So go check them out. Follow Stalker for all the videos, and then check out Stalker for incredible bows. It's not often that a new company comes along in the archery world and just absolutely changes the game. However, that is exactly what Dialed Archery did when they entered the scene. Pretty much took the archery world by storm, and for good reason. Now, if you followed me, my review of the Arxos. There was some things I didn't like about the Arxos. However, when the proof was introduced, here's what they did. They took all of the customer feedback. They took all the customer feedback so well that I believe with the proof, they have created a perfect sight. They listened to what the archery world wanted and needed out of a sight, and that's what they got with the proof. It is completely redesigned. It's completely in every way. It's just a better sight. They have improved on every issue that people had with the Arxos, and they have created, in my opinion, an absolute bomb-proof sight. Completely customizable on the website. Colors, pin configuration, pin sizes, pin colors, completely customizable. You get exactly what you want right out of the box. Guys, I would highly encourage you to go check out Dialed Archery for your next sight. You are going to get, here's what I promise you, you are going to get more yardage out of a sight tape. Now, for a guy who's relatively on the short side of a draw length, that's pretty important to me. I shoot a heavier arrow and I don't have an incredibly long draw length. So that rail giving me a little bit more out of my sight tape is something that's very important to me. However, all of the other features of the proof make a bomb-proof sight. You can throw that thing around the mountain. You can drag it through the mud. It's going to perform every single time because Dialed has created, in my opinion, with the proof, the perfect sight. Go check out dialedarchery.com for your next and your last bow sight. But guys, thank you so much for listening. You guys have a fantastic week, a great fall, and keep the dusty side up.